thank you all for attending the event today. This is a very exciting time for us all on the collaborative panel because it's really the first time we've had the opportunity to have a discussion with the sector around the collaborative panel. I too would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we're meeting today and welcome acknowledge elders past and present. I'd also like to acknowledge Carolyn as chair of the collaborative panel, and also to thank Kylie, James, Neil and Gabby, who we will hear from very soon, who are going to be a part of today's event to tell us their story about what they hope for the monumental changes that are coming up with the community sector in relation to ageing, disability and mental health services. So VCOS is a very proud member of this collaborative panel, and this panel came together because community organisations are facing significant changes and lots of uncertainty in their operating environments, which I'm sure many of you are aware. So our sectors are anticipating and attempting to navigate and understand the transformational changes that are happening with state and Commonwealth government changes and reforms. So it's a very delicate balancing act for the community sector at the moment, thinking about how we can continue to operate business as usual, plus also adapt to this climate of change. So the panel acknowledged that many organisations are perhaps struggling and grappling with, well, what are these changes going to mean for the community sector and for our organisations? So as part of that, we developed a set of briefing papers, which are on your table at the moment in a pile, which really were designed to be used so that you can share them with your boards, share them with your senior managers, to start to talk around some of these changes and what they're going to mean for your organisations. So with funding from State Trustees Australia Foundation, who we would like to acknowledge for their founding support of the collaborative panel, we were able to develop these papers, which you will see. So they seek to support the sector by outlining the complex and changing environments that's happening in the sector and what some of the implications. So they're deliberately short on their topics. They're really meant to be conversation starters that your boards might have, your senior managers might have. So in developing these papers, we considered which of the government policies and preferences are most likely to impact on the operating environments. So as we've all experienced, government policies often counteract or contradict each other, and leaving the sector often to interpret by itself, or what are the implications of these changes? And really that's what today's forum's about. What are the implications of these impending changes which we're going to see across the ageing, disability and mental health sectors? So the community sector is continually subject to choices that government makes, things like competitive tendering, for example. And some of these choices don't sit well with each other. So I guess a couple of the papers that I'd like to highlight are government purchase of services, client choice and client control. So firstly, in terms of thinking about government purchase of services, so we know that government is continuing and it's unprecedentedly outsourcing its services. So government can purchase services from for-profit organisations and not-for-profit organisation. And the community sector has benefited greatly from this preference by government to outsource a lot of its services. However, there's some challenges. We know that funding doesn't always keep up with the real cost of what it costs to deliver services. And our organisations are often expected to cover those costs through things like fundraising or looking for alternative revenue sources. Tendering processes often fail to recognise that local knowledge is critical in delivering services, and it can hinder collaboration, partnership and trust between community sector organisations. So these can greatly affect the outcomes of the services we're trying to deliver. The second and third papers explore the concepts of client choice and client control, and these are often used interchangeably, but they're quite different terms. And the papers seek to articulate what the differences are between client choice and client control. So we know client control refers to clients as opposed to governments. So clients can control which organisations are going to support them, rather than being told which organisations will support them. Governments are increasingly interested in client choice approaches as a means for improving outcomes. And essentially, organisations that are able to attract and retain clients are going to be those that will grow and develop further. So it's calling on a new skill set that perhaps the community sector hasn't fully embraced in the past. So what does that mean for the future? Client choice, for example, is really around what does it mean in terms of what is going to be delivered for me? How do I, as a client, get to choose the types of services, the way it's delivered? So we're co-designing that together. So that's a really critical piece of change, and it's a strong preference by government, which many of us in the community sector strongly support, that consumers do have that choice and control. And so a lot of what you're going to hear about this afternoon, and particularly from our next panel, will be around, well, what does client choice and control mean? So I'll leave it there because it's enough of me talking, but there's more briefing papers available to you on local area governance and planning, measuring outcomes, funding constraints, demand for services, and that multiple and complex needs of clients. So thank you for your time. Hopefully these resources will be of use to you in your organisation. They're also available to download from VCOS's website electronically and in accessible Word formats as well. So with no further ado, I'll hand back to Carolyn.